Well, let's talk some more. A professor of public law, Dean Emeritus, Faculty of Law, University of Nigeria, and the Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Joy Ezelo, joins me on the program from Enugu State. Prof, it's so good to have you join us on the program today. And before we go into talking about the 16 days of activism, quickly, let me get your reaction to that trending case of defamation involving Senior Advocates of Nigeria, Feba Balola and Dele Farotimi. By law, what exactly constitutes defamation?
Even though I was just planning to talk about 16 days of activism, yes, surely in our criminal code, and of course, even in terms of civil litigation, the criminal code states that any person, for example, who publishes any defamatory matter is guilty of a misdemeanor, usually it's a misdemeanor, and is liable to imprisonment for 1 year. But any person who publishes any defamatory matter, knowing it to be false, because truth is a defense, and truth can exonerate the person, knowing it to be false will then be liable to imprisonment for 2 years. So, I mean, that's it. But the issue is that it's a bit hazy in our law because people thought it was a settled law with Nwankwo and the state, where criminal, especially the aspect of criminal defamation. Defamation will always be there because if you defame people, put them into disrepute, and then make infamous statements that affect their integrity and their personality, they have a right to take action, seek for damages and everything. But we've always known that, if you publish seditious material, then of course, Nwankwo and the state was the test case whether the criminal defamation still exists under our law. And the court had a contrary opinion. But then later on, there was a case in a Supreme Court, because I didn't know that you were interviewing me on this. I think Avomi or something, in 2022, that seems to unsettle what appears to have been settled law. So with that case, criminal defamation can still be instituted in certain cases. And more so, of course, we run a federation, and in the area of criminal code is an area where states and federal government share concurrent powers. So within states, they may have criminal defamation, and in some states it might not exist. But at federal level, from the Supreme Court decision, criminal defamation is still possible. But there is no doubt about the civil implication and then the damages that one is obliged to pay. For example, if you defame or slander someone, or commit libel, for example. So those are the issues. So right. I think yes, people will have their day in court, but what people don't want is something that will remind us of those dark days of military rule, where this was used to clamp down, especially on journalists and media, all these draconian decrees. Yes. And that was what is reminiscence, and that's what happened in the case of Nwankwo and the state. So we run a democracy, and citizens' rights are paramount, but of course citizen rights include citizens' rights from all sides, including the right of the person who is alleged to have been defamed, also a right to protection of their name and their good names.
Okay, Prof. But in our nation, Nigeria, how easy is it for someone who is defamed to get justice?
You can get justice, especially when it's published, because when it's published, then it's there. And if you have, if the person who published it cannot defend it, because like I said, truth is a defense. And if you cannot defend it and falsely and maliciously what he knows to be false and publish it, then the person will get damages, of course. There have been civil litigation in those directions, and people have had justice, of course. But then, it can go on and, for a number of years, because then they're going through the appeal process and all of that. And then sometime maybe the kind of punitive damages one may wish to get may not be. Some also, most of those cases end up in court or retraction and then apology. All of that, works to not allow the case to just run its full cycle. But I think, yeah, it's very common, yeah.
As a respected member of the noble profession, legal or political solution to this particular issue?
Of course, it's been already politicized, sensationalized, and then it's before the court. Personally, I wouldn't like to be commenting on a case before the court, but like I said, if the person who published that believed that you know, he has all the evidence, then truth becomes a defense that can exonerate him. But if that is not the case, then of course the law will take its full course. So I mean, so that's it, actually.
All right, Prof. So I'll place you on hold for a moment. We'll take a break, and then when we come back, we'll dwell on the issue of the 16 days of activism, which ends on Tuesday. Please stay with us.
So, okay.
Ahmed Tinubu, do solemnly swear. Happy birthday to an uncommon Senate President. As you mark your unique birthday, I join your millions of supporters, friends, family members, and well-wishers to celebrate you. You are an uncommon leader and a worthy friend I do not take for granted. On behalf of my family, the good people of Edo State, and the government, I wish you more wisdom to pilot the affairs of the Senate and contribute your quota to the growth of the Nigerian nation. I wish you good health and more fruitful years ahead, Your Excellency. Congratulations, Uncommon Leader. Signed, His Excellency, Senator Monday Okpebolo, Executive Governor of Edo State. Tinubu, do solemnly swear.
Thank you for staying with us on the program. Focus today is on the 16 days of activism, which began on the 25th of November, 2024. And my guest is Professor of Public Law, Dean Emeritus, Faculty of Law, University of Nigeria, and Senior Advocate of Nigeria. She's also MD of the Women's Aid Collective, WACOL. Professor Joy Ezelo, so good to have you on the program today. Talking about the 16 days of activism, you have been at the forefront, standing against the violence against women and children. What is your assessment of how well we are faring as a nation in this fight?
I think we've made some progress. We've also regressed. But in terms of actual response to a woman or a girl who is a victim of gender-based violence, we are not doing very well, because the systems, have not been, is not such that is activated to immediately respond to a woman in a difficult circumstances. So one who's, who is a victim or survivor of gender-based violence. So today is the 15th day of the 16 days of activism, which is usually a time to commemorate and use it to do stock taking, but beyond stock taking, just to give visibility to the epidemic of gender-based violence, also put it violence against women and girls. And of course, we know violence affects all genders, including children. But because it disproportionately affects women and girls, that's why the emphasis, and we're not saying any form of violence is okay, it's not. And when you look at the forms and manifestation of it, or the trend, especially in Nigeria, you see that sexual violence, including rape, sexual harassment, incest, on the rise. And then you have also harmful cultural practices around early marriage, early and forced marriage, issues of widowhood and widowhood disinheritance. And then you have other forms, spousal battery, which is very common, and then female genital mutilation or female circumcision. They're all part of harmful cultural practices. And then, of course, the abuse, the social media, the digital violence is one that is currently affecting a lot of women. And I just had a case last week, and one of them testified in the mock tribunal we organized on Friday, which a woman was just stripped naked, her photos taken, and before you know it, they post it. They use it to blackmail women. Even women politicians are also victims of the political violence and digital violence now because of the social media. Before you know it, the person is all over, with their images. All right. And this have worst effect on the victims of that.
All right, Prof. But then we have the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. The VAP.
Yes, that's what I said. That we have made progress. Yes, in terms of implementation, at least 35 of the 36 states have adopted it. It's a good thing. I was part and parcel of it from beginning of the drafting to the end to advocacy and everything. So it is really something we are very proud of to have. But law in the books is one thing and law in action is a different thing. De jure and de facto. So when you look at it in the books now, we can say, oh, we have Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act applicable in FCT and the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Law applicable in almost all the states of the Federation. But then when it comes to actual implementation, for example, that law requires protection order. Most of the states have not even activated regulations and other ancillary practice direction that will enable that protection to be invoked. There are other remedies available, including assistance through psychosocial support, hospital-based intervention and help for a person who have suffered violence and needs that protection. So the medical aspect, they are still problems. Of course, nobody will walk into even a public hospital and you expect them to get free treatment. That's supposed to be, and they're supposed to be a specific unit that will handle such cases. We don't have. Very few states have had, even though now we have the Sexual Assault Referral Center, of course, which I also founded, the TAMASAC, Tama Sexual Assault Referral Center in Enugu, and Mirabel in Lagos, and then you have the Lagos state government intervention. But what we are saying is that beyond effort of NGOs, because they seem to constitute the bulk of service providers, including faith-based organizations, that we want to see government primarily in front of this, and leading this, because the government should. Those are also problems that should concern government, and there should be budget that speaks to that.
But Prof, I suppose that government would also need to work with these, organizations that you have listed. Once they have to do that.
Yeah, I think Lagos State is also a very good example of that, ones that even support NGOs in that direction. Ideally, how it functions, because I've also worked as a United Nations Special Rapporteur on human trafficking globally. And I know that whenever I go to a country on UN mission, we try to find out what facilities they have, things like shelter, usually run by NGOs or other service providers, and government, based on the number of cases they handle, also subsidize those services. I wouldn't even encourage government to go into certain services, because of the usual problem we know around corruption, around bureaucracy, around rapetism and not being too professional. So because anyone who is in need and who is a victim or survivor of gender-based violence or violence need a particular specialized care that will have confidentiality, privacy, and including international best practice. And usually government and civil service setup are not the best to run that. Right. But the issue is that NGOs, service provision, are even rarely funded by even donor partners. So you find that few NGOs like us, Women's Aid Collective, that provide free legal aid, is also, how legal cases can drag in court, but access to justice and gender justice and effective remedies are part and parcel of that, the restitution, the compensation, what women need in order to heal, the succor and the intervention that we must or bring. It has to be integrated services, including financial, medical, psychosocial support, counseling, and actual justice.
All right. I hear you, Prof. And, you know, just like you've mentioned, you know how some of these cases can drag on sometimes. And then also the fact that along the line, some of these victims or survivors even pull out of the cases due to different reasons.
True. Because some of them now settle, some out of harassment, some out of, you know, come today, come tomorrow. You quickly turn a victim into a, you know, so those kind of situations, they see themselves stigmatized, re-victimized, doubly jeopardized, and then they will seek to withdraw. And in some cases, there are people who have power over others. And I've seen this happen in case of a lot of girl children. By the time the matter is going to court, the parents will settle with a perpetrator, no accountability, and then say, oh, we don't want cases. Then once we've intervened and have gone to court, before you know it, they start avoiding organizations that are supporting them because they've gone to collect money from the perpetrator, the accused person, the suspect, who is even in detention. Sometimes police encourage them to settle out of court, unfortunately. And such cases, there are certain cases that shouldn't be settled out of court. I know I will understand if it has to do with spousal battery, in as much as we condemn it and want zero tolerance. You can say the family unity is at stake here. So you give option for them to be settled in order to have long-lasting relationship. But then not in cases of rape. One does not expect to have these cases settled out of the court.
It should be pursued to a logical conclusion. As we wrap up, Prof, you have just about 30 seconds to react to this. What is your counsel to women, girls, people who could be in abusive relationships and who need help at this time?
Just report it. Don't keep quiet. If you're silent, you know, it will go on and on forever. You must have to have people you trust, you can tell, and then seek out, you know, other people that are service providers. Please don't die in silence. And again, zero tolerance help, enable a woman who is in need. We have people do anonymous reporting. That is encouraged, and that's also help. And we also begging the authorities and pleading with them to be more responsive to cases of gender-based violence, because sometimes we trivialize it, you know, and then just laugh over it. Please, it's not a laughing matter. This is a serious business that really affects a woman or a girl child realizing her full potential. It's about survival and development.
All right. And earlier you were talking about rape. You know, it's quite difficult and cumbersome to prove that, you know, one has been raped. What specific steps would you tell someone who has encountered that, you know, to take in order to be able to get justice done in that matter?
It's actually preservation of evidence, but of course corroboration is required because there are 4 ingredients of rape. It must be sex without consent, you know, and then of course the person must have carnal knowledge of the woman, and it will be someone of age, because if you're not certain age, you're deemed incapable of having a woman's carnal knowledge. And that corroboration is where there is always a problem, and penetration and all of that, proving it. But slightest of penetration should suffice. But the problem is lack of forensics, because if you have DNA labs, you can easily, conclusively tell what is this person's DNA doing in someone's genitalia. But you know, for a woman who is raped, and I don't wish it on my worst enemy, you want to wash out all of the evidence immediately. You don't, if you have to, you don't want to, you know, you remove, you can even burn the cloth. But we say, no, this is not the way to go. You just, if possible, remain the way you are, and then go for immediate tests, collect police report, and then go for necessary tests, leave the evidence, and all of that.
Yes, I hear you. And it's actually a great place to leave the conversation. Thank you very much for sharing with us, you know, from your wealth of knowledge and experience on this. Professor of Public Law, Dean Emeritus, Faculty of Law, UNN, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Professor Joy Ezelu. Thank you for your time on the program.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.